Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, episode 332. After taking a week off last week, we're back. I am your host, Michael. Joining us this week, our usual cast of characters: Gail from Community Digital News, Daniel from For Boxing News Podcast, and the InScriber Digital Magazine, and special guest. Um, I've been knowing this person for really maybe a few months now. All of us are part of a private group that talks boxing on Zoom, and I heard him on Daniel's show uh, this week, and I said, let me reach out to the brother and see if I can get him on Pound for Pound Boxing Report, and he agreed to join us. Marquise Johns of Big Fight Weekend. What's going on, brother? How you doing?
Pretty good, guys. No, if you know, you know, man. No, it's great to be on with you guys to talk boxing. And pretty much, it's funny about in terms of this boxing week where it's like everything's just going on and it's all making less and less sense. But here we are.
Before we get things kicked off,
this may turn out to be a rash decision, but you can table that judgment until we're done.
Fair.
Before we get things kicked off, I'll give you the opportunity to introduce yourself, who you are, and what you do, and all things Big Fight Weekend.
Absolutely, man. Marquise Johns, senior writer, BigFightWeekend.com. Been doing it for a couple of years there now. I've been going on year 4 of this dad. Been covering boxing for aeons. Did freelancing for when people used to read the newspaper at the Tribune and the St. Pete Times back in the day. Worked with FightNews.com when people used to read that back in the day. Pretty much everything involving boxing I used to do back in the day. I'm one of those throwback guys. But now I've been doing that for a while. Also do about 8 million things with Joe Louis Bourbon, Making a Champions podcast where we interview amateur boxers and a bunch of up and comers pretty much during the year. Pretty much also the de facto spokesman for Joe Louis Bourbon as well. And as you know, JoeLouisBourbon.com, guys. Be original, be a legend, be Joe Louis. Get your bottle as well. It's delicious stuff.
Indeed. And for those who are new to Pound for Pound Boxing Report, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, live YouTube show, podcast, and website discussing all things boxing. The motto is, when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, it will get talked about. If you want to find out all information about the show, the website is the place to go to. P4PBoxingReport.com, and repeat that, P4PBoxingReport.com. If you check out the site, you'll find the links to find us all over the podcast realm, be it Anchor, be it Spotify, be it Google, Apple Podcasts, anything and everything in between. We're just about everywhere right now. You can also check out where you find us on social media, the Facebook page, the YouTube page, the Twitter page, Tumblr. We're on IG now. I need to update that. Where you can donate, got a Cash Me and PayPal link on the site. And last but certainly not least, link to my online coaching page. Let's Build Together Group Fitness Challenge is ongoing and started July the 5th. I believe Daniel and Gail are taking part. I need to see some posts from you, lady and gent. See what you're doing. If you're interested in anything Beachbody on demand, please check out my coaching page. If you do so, please take advantage of the 2-week free trial on Beachbody on Demand. What that is throughout the year, Beachbody on Demand offers 2 weeks of free workouts, access to any and all programs on Beachbody on Demand, be it the Classic P90X series, the Insanity Asylum, Shift Shop, Bar Blend, Pio, which the ladies like, Morning Meltdown, or the boxing base, the 6 weeks of the work, which is one of my favorites. I will argue the most challenging, or the boxing base program, 10 rounds. 10 rounds is a boxing program, 3 days of cardio, 2 days of weightlifting. I think it's a really fun workout program. Again, if you're interested in any of that, please check out my coaching page. And also if you want to email the show, questions, comments, please do so at P4PBoxing at P4PBoxingReport.com. Let's get things going. Starting with ladies first, as usual. Let's go to California, formerly known as StubHub. Gail, big long card that was promoted by Golden Boy. The headliner was Zerto Ramirez, who's bit of flux, if I would argue, former super middleweight champion, had his run-ins with Bob Arum, and since he's left, he's become borderline irrelevant. He recently signed with Golden Boy, fought Sullivan Barrera, right? He stopped him, I want to say, I think it was 3 rounds, looked good doing it, body shots were the key. What your assessment of Zerto following the fight afterwards he called for a bout against Bivol? Where do you see Zerto now coming off of that win?
Well, let me make one small correction. While the card was in Los Angeles, it was held at the Bank of California Stadium. It's the new home of LAFC, built on the old grounds of the Los Angeles Sports Arena. So there's a little something in the air. And that's the second boxing card there. Top Rank held the Navarrete Magdaleno card a couple years ago. It's sort of StubHub polished up and pretty. It's bigger, it's new, but it is outdoor. It's got a little bit of the same vibe, primarily Southern California, knowledgeable Mexican-American audience. And that is who the card was geared toward. The locals, the hardcore, the folks that know their boxing. And you know what? They did show up. They did show up for this. Zerto needed this fight. Nothing less than this kind of a blowout. And God bless him, he got it. Yeah. Those cynics among you may look at Sullivan Barrera and say, wow, was he rusty? Did he get old overnight? Is he a shadow of his former self? All of those things could be true. Or perhaps Zerto just knew it was do or die. He was well prepared, well trained. He had everybody who knew him on the sidelines, including Golden Boy's matchmaker Robert Diaz, screaming instructions at him the entire fight as long as it lasted. He did the same for Jojo Diaz, I might add. And Zerto did deliver. He did deliver the performance he needed. He looked great. I love me a guy who gets that knockout via the body shot, and he had little to fear from Barrera. He assessed that pretty quickly after the first few rounds. He went to work, he went to town, and he got it done. And yeah, then he called out Dimitri Bivol. That's a very makeable fight. Both Golden Boy and Bivol, who's promoted by Matchroom, but is sort of one of these, quasi-free agent Eastern European fighters. That's incredibly makeable. They both need dance partners. Bivol seems willing. I like it. I don't hate it, as we say on this show frequently. I'd be there to see it. I'd be ready for it. So good main event. Crowd loved it. Just kind of action stoppage they wanted to see.
I'm going to include everybody into this discussion, but because we started things late and we got a lot of fights to cover, my apologies. I want to say here publicly for starting things late. I had some things to do. Staff made for Three Kings Boxing. Check out threekingsboxing.com, latest source for boxing information. I'm going to bring you into this discussion, Marquise. Mm-hmm. When Zerto defeated Arthur Abraham, I believe it was 2016, to win the WBO belt at 168, he looked like someone who could be a real threat in that 60 to 75 pound landscape, right? Mm-hmm. There was talk of him fighting the likes of Canelo, the likes of Triple G, but in his subsequent title defenses, he never showed the form that he displayed against Abraham. Moving forward now into 2021, how much of a threat do you think he is at 175, be it against Bivol or any of the other top light heavyweights out there?
He's a legitimate threat at 175, and it's mainly for the simple fact at 175, much like these classes, the 175, the cruiserweights, and the 168. Personally, there's not much there once you get past the champions and the contenders. It's really a bare landscape. And I was reminded the other day about this with the WBC, for example. I think Marcus Brown is still number 2, guys, and I think So we're stuck with that. But in terms of Zordo possibly taking on someone like the likes of Bivol, that fight has to happen next. I'm surprised that they haven't made that phone call already. It's one of those fights where both of these guys need a credible opponent, and both of them have titles, and nothing beats a unification bout. I mean, it's a no-brainer, you would think, but politics and semantics, I'm sure, willing. And I keep hearing things about Bivol wanting to fight another stay busy over another domestic fight overseas, and it's like we've seen this already. I mean, we've seen Lerone Richards and the like. So I mean, put him in there with someone like Zordo, and hopefully this will be the time where Zordo actually shines. I'm just surprised, honestly, that we got this performance out of Zordo, considering the last few times, more often than not, we kind of know what Gilbert Ramirez is at this point, guys, where it's like either he's going to show out or he's going to bore us to death for 36 minutes. It's no gray area. There's no in-between on it. And luckily, this time around against Sullivan Barrera, who did look like Gale, he got old once the bell rang real fast. It reminded me a lot of this fight, of the fight he had on his last fight with Top Ring against Joe Capernsey. Granted, Capernsey walked in that fight with a shiner already into the ring, but the one thing that Ramirez did do was he got him out of there, and that's the one thing he needed to do in this fight to at least salvage any form of marketability to challenge for any of these title contenders, and I'm hoping that'll be the case.
Same question applies to you, Daniel. To Marquise's point. The fight between Zordo and Bivol, it makes sense. It's reasonable. It should be easy to have. It should be easy to negotiate. But this is boxing, and sometimes when it makes too much sense, when it sounds too much like right, for some reason it doesn't happen. Your thoughts on Zordo in the aftermath of this stoppage win over Barrera?
First, like I said, Marquise knows my opinion on this when it comes into this fight. This was just sad. I'm sorry. This was just sad. So you could tell Sullivan gave up as soon as he stepped in the ring. And it's kind of bad to say in that sense, because you don't want to disrespect the man. But it did look that way. Like he gave up. But he tried, but unfortunately, like I say, it wasn't. As far as the knockout, yeah, Zordo needed the knockout. But it wasn't as impressive in that sense. But it still doesn't change the fact that Zordo is an undefeated fighter. He's a former champion. So a fight with him and Bivol makes sense if you can't get Joe Smith. And your thinking is that, yeah, you're not going to get Joe Smith. Here's the problem, though, when it comes to me, when it comes to Zordo. He has the same issue to me that Deontay Wilder had, where the best technical fight he's had was the fight where he won the title. And everything after that has been the law of diminishing returns. In the sense of the fact that now it just looks like instead of him taking the championship from Arthur Abraham, it's just now saying, okay, you just beat an old Arthur Abraham. If they can make this fight, I would love it. I would love to make this fight, because Turbiev right now doesn't seem to have any dance partners, considering what I said regarding the Joe Smith situation. He may no longer have a dance partner. But that's Zordo dealing with Top Rank. And Zordo and Bob didn't exactly leave on the best terms. So that's going to be interesting, but it's good to it'll test both of them, because maybe Zordo the style will be the type of fighter that forces Bivol to actually kick it up a gear and not just do his usual thing of, if I can't knock you out in 3 rounds, I'm just going to outbox you.
If Zordo is on his A game, a fight between him and Bivol would be very good. If I qualify, he's on his A game. Let's hope that Oscar, Hearn, Matchroom, Golden Boy comes to their senses and make it happen. I hope that Bivol doesn't entertain another voluntary defense, because he needs a big fight just as much as Ramirez do. Both of them kind of lost at sea, if you will. They're not being talked about really as Canelo has a casting shadow over everything from 160 to 175. They both would love a fight against Canelo. They're not going to get it. You don't see Zerto dealing with top ranked light heavyweights for obvious reasons. So again, why not fight each other? But this is boxing. If it sounds too much like right, it doesn't happen. Let's hope in this case that fight does happen sometime later this year, if not early 2022. And let's move on to some other fights, and this is where I'm going to split things up. Let's go to you. Go back to you, Marquise. Ramirez and Barrera was the main event of this card, of this Golden Boy card that was aired on the Zone. But the highlight fight for many fans, particularly hardcore heads, was the lightweight contest between Jojo Diaz and Javier Fortuna. Fortuna, a former champion at 130, so was Diaz. There was a lot of question marks on Diaz following his last fight, in which, let's just say, he embarrassed himself, in my opinion. It wasn't just the fact that he came in overweight, it was how much he came overweight, right? First defense of the title, one would think he would be on his P's and Q's, and quite frankly, he wasn't. Not only did he come overweight in his last fight, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name because I would butcher it. His performance subsequently was He's moved up to 135, fighting a Fortuna who's been trying to get a fight against the likes of Devin Haney, of Ryan Garcia, and the like. And to Diaz's credit, he put on one of the best performances of his career, particularly over the second half of the fight, where I think he took control. He just outworked, and he seemed to be the more powerful and the stronger man in there. I know going into the fight, Fortuna was a slight favorite according to the bookies, I believe. But were you surprised at not just how that Diaz won, but how he won and how he kind of took over the second half?
Actually, I am, because I thought going into this fight, and depending on what book you're looking at, I think Jojo Diaz actually was the favorite in this one, believe it or not. There was like -113, 114. I thought personally going into this fight that this fight had draw written all over it, because I thought it was going to be one of those tactical fights where Jojo wouldn't have enough power to keep Fortuna off of him, but I figured Fortuna wouldn't do enough to actually, press the issue either. And I was right on the latter part of it, because Fortuna had no answer for Jojo Diaz in the second half of this fight. But what impressed me more than anything else was the fact that Jojo Diaz would pretty much just flat out outboxed Fortuna up and down. And it really was a good fight for him. And actually, it's one of those redemption stories, guys, because this guy, as you laid out before, where he lost his belt in the scale, had that miserable effort against Rachmaninoff, and I personally thought he lost that fight. They gave him a draw. They gave that thing a draw just to keep it moving. But no, this time around, he looked good. This was his best performance I've seen of him in a long time, if not ever. And this hopefully does set up a big time fight for him. Now he's stationed in that weird WBC mandatory position, whatever that means, and whatever they do with it. But either way, he's lined up now to be in conversation for bigger names now at this point. And it's a good look for him. It's a great story.
Follow-up question. There was him and WBC lightweight champion Devin Haney, a lot of beefing, a lot of barking back and forth with each other on Twitter. Do you think those two will eventually fight it, or so? What's your early prediction?
If they do fight, it'll be probably first quarter of the year. I'm convinced anytime I see fighters talk to each other immediately on Twitter for one reason or another, if it's not about getting logins to Call of Duty or whatever online game these guys are playing, then it's not about a fight anytime in the near future. So these guys are going to be talking noise for a solid 3 to 4 months. The old build up thing. This is pretty much the closest we're going to get nowadays, guys, in terms of modern marination of fights, in terms of like build up and fighters, building their brand up in a way where they just have to sit and just talk noise on Twitter to whoever and whatever. But no, I really think at the end of the day, we'll get this fight hopefully kick off the beginning of the year. I don't see why not.
Seniesa Estrada Gale is, to the eyes of many women boxing observers, low key one of the best pound for pound women's fighters in the world, right? Um, World champion at 105 pounds, moved up to 108, right? And fought a Japanese fighter by the name of Tsunami. And midway through that fight, I would argue that Tsunami gave as good as she got. To me, it was close on the scorecard. It was basically even. But to Estrada's credit, she showed why people think so highly of her. She adjusted, and just like Diaz took over in the second fight, so did Seniesa. So did Super Bad, right? She ended up winning the WBO 108 pound strap by decision. The question is, where do you think she goes from here? She's talked about wanting to unify at 108 and unify at 105, but she has one tantalizing rematch that could take place. If you were handling her, what direction would you take Superbad?
So this to me was the most impressive performance of the night, other than a fighter I didn't know very well, who we're going to talk about, I think, a little bit later. So we'll jump the gun there. But Estrada was coming up a division to win her second division title, become a 2-division champion, and she did. Sitting ringside, yeah, Tsunami was landing punches, but with nowhere near the power that Estrada lands. Like, something turned on in Estrada's head 4, 5, 6 fights back, a couple years back. Now, talking to her longtime cut man before the fight, who many of us know, it's his opinion that when it started to become less of a job and more fun for her, when she could focus strictly on being an athlete versus having to have a side hustle and sell tickets and promote herself, once she had the backing of an organization like Golden Boy, she could relax into strictly athletic excellence, and that's what we're seeing. I was impressed. And damn it, she is the poster child for why the women need 3-minute rounds. She had Tsunami wobbled and hurt more than once at that damn 1 minute and 50-second mark. And she would try, but she just needed a little bit more time, because to her credit, Tsunami's very tough. But it was a lopsided set of scorecards, deservedly so. She put on a great performance. If I'm advising her, I tell her to stay in one of these 2 weight divisions and unify, whichever one. She's much more comfortable at 105. It's very tough to make these fights. As she pointed out, for a lot of these women, they really cling tightly to these belts. They're not real willing to engage. And for a lot of them, they just don't want to fight as often. She called them all part-time fighters while she's a full-time fighter. I don't think she's entirely wrong. That would be her preference, and that would be mine if those fights are makeable. Either 105, or if she wants to give it a shot at 108, she could certainly pursue that. However, sitting ringside with a shit-eating grin on her face was Marlen Esparza, who Estrada beat convincingly, surprisingly convincingly, in a bit of a coming out party in 2019, late 2019. A lot of people remember that fight because Marlen suffered a pretty wicked cut from a headbutt, kind of right on the top peak of her head, and it was a nasty cut. But in my mind, Esparza beat her handily, absolutely handily. And I don't think she needs...
You mean Estrada beat her handily?
Estrada beat Esparza handily, yes, pardon me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think she needs to revisit it. I think everybody else around her wants to revisit it. I do think she'll revisit it if the money is right and the setting is right. She'll do it. But as she said, she does not consider there to be any unfinished business between the two of them. She's done. She did her thing. She beat her. Next. Thank you. Next. But if she gets it, she's a smart woman. She markets herself well. If that's the fight that brings her the most attention and makes her the most money, I don't think she'll say no, especially if unification fights end up really being a struggle for the matchmaking team. So I think she's open to it, but not looking for it. Everybody else wants it more than she does. And, I'm really with her. She beat her. Next.
I excuse my ignorance about Super Bad, but I didn't know Seniesa Estrada was that good on the mic, particularly when it came to her comments about Esparza, the fact that she told her that she's basically sitting ringside to witness greatness, that she don't need to fight her, but basically if she wants a good warm-up, she'll go in the parking lot right after the fight and beat her up again.
Which got a huge
she trolled the mess out of Esparza. I didn't expect that. That turned into a bit of a highlight for me.
She's got an attitude on her, and she's from East LA. She's very similar roots, believe it or not, to Oscar De La Hoya. They have a very good relationship. And Bernard Hopkins thinks very highly of her as well. And the East LA crowd and the Los Angeles boxing fans in general absolutely love her, have embraced her. It's been a really good thing to see. And, other than some of the other big marquee names we know in women's boxing, Clarissa Shields, Katie Taylor, Taya Estrada is right up there. She's absolutely in my top 10. I'm not quite sure she's up in the top 5 because other than the ones I named, you also have Amanda Serrano and a handful of others who are terrific athletes. But she's knocking on the door, no question.
Yeah, I know ESPN, they have Michaela Mayer. They just released their top 10. They have Michaela Mayer in their top 5 as well. I don't know personally if she's that high. I think the woman she's fighting next, Hamadouche, is more accomplished than her. She just won the belt and had one title defense. So I don't think it's fair to put her above Hamadouche, her contemporaries, people who have not seen. She can really fight and she can punch for a 130-pounder. But that's another discussion for another day. I go to you, Daniel. If Zerto got the badly won in the fashion that he badly needed, if Seniesa Estrada showed why she's the quality fighter people believe that she is, we may have had a coming out party in the lightweight division. And that was in the form of William Zepeda, fought an undefeated guy by the name of Tanara, right? And in the lead up, I kept reading that this could be a possibly even fight. Well, Zepeda, who was unknown to a lot of even hardcore heads like ourselves, man, did he put on something. He swarmed Tanahara from jump and was on him like a pack of wild dogs. Didn't give him a room to breathe. Very Jeff Finnick-like in his attack. Tanahara, he had no answers. Couldn't keep him off of him, and it got to a point where his Robert Garcia, his trainer, basically said, I can't have my kid taking any more of this punishment. Basically, forced retirement. Your reaction to the fight, were you as surprised as I was about Zepeda? And moving forward, he looks like he could be a upcoming player at 135.
Oh, that was a beautiful performance. I had, like I said, when I was looking at it, like, yeah, it's going to be an even fight. This is going to be a good test for both guys. But Zepeda took the ball and ran with it. He didn't give Tanakashi any room to breathe. And the beating is bad to the point where, like you mentioned it, when Robert Garcia puts your safety paramount in that situation. Because Robert Garcia is usually the type of guy that will be like, no, you got to fight your way out of it. No. He did, luckily, what he was supposed to do. He protected his fighter from what was looking to be a pretty bad, really, really bad situation from becoming worse. But Zepeda, you're not gonna throw him with the Haneys. You're not gonna throw him with the tanks immediately. But he's in the discussion now, and you can put him in a certain area where, if let's say, for example, if you can't make the Haney fight for whatever reason, if you can't get Tank for the obvious reasons that Floyd Mayweather made clear, him and Jojo would not be a bad fight, because it'll be Zepeda swarming style against Jojo's beating of attrition. Who's gonna win? Is the swarm gonna win? Or
You know who I want to see him in there with? Excuse me for interrupting. It'll never happen because Oscar will never let it happen. At least not now. I would love to see him fight Garcia.
Ryan, no, not at the moment. Like, I want to see Ryan first. Like, if I had my choice right now, it would be Jojo, Ryan first, and then you could probably do the Zepeda fight afterwards, because you have to give Ryan a fight against somebody's not going to swarm, but somebody that is going to beat you into attrition, and that's what Jojo can do. So that's going to be very interesting. But like I said, you mentioned it. Look at what Golden Boy has: Zepeda, Jojo, Ryan. The zone has Haney. Tank still somewhat operates at lightweight. In fact, it was probably preferable that he stay at lightweight. And not to mention, you still have Loma there. And there's always that lingering, like I said, that lingering come up of either Jamel Herring or Shakur Stevenson within the next year. So lightweight is a feast right now. And Zepeda just made himself a very, very tantalizing plate on it.
Absolutely. At the very least, I want to see this dude fight again, because he has a highly entertaining style. Fans are going to eat him up in terms of the action, he brings to the ring, and in some ways, he was the most impressive performance of the night, of the entire card to me, because I didn't see that coming. I didn't know much about him, and I want to see him again, though. Absolutely. Now, full disclosure here. We're all quote unquote friends in a sense with one Sulem Urbina. We've all either talked to her privately or have interviewed her for various boxing spaces, right? She got her first world title opportunity on this card, fighting Japanese fighter by the name of Fujioka for flyweight title, WBA version. She lost, right, by decision. Two of the scorecards were close. One was like 99-91. I think one was 2 points. The other was either 2 or 3 points, and the third one was 8 points. Quick word from everyone here. Your thoughts on the fight? I personally thought it could have went either way. Your reaction to that third card of 99-91, because that is the one in particular that has those who've seen the fight, has the most perplexed. If you want to say that Fujioka won the fight, okay, fine. But have it that margin? Nah.
Yeah, to piggyback your point, Michael, that card was bad, but we all know who had submitted that card into the California State Athletic Commission, and none of it in the greatness of Dr. Lou Moret. So it's not as perplexing once you say the name Lou Moret out there.
Like the Lawrence Cole. Lou Moret is like the Lawrence Cole of judges.
No, that card wasn't very good. I thought Fujioka won the fight. I thought the card was a lot closer to what they all had it listed too. I thought it was like 96, 94, something like that. But no, it's just a crappy Lou Moret scorecard. I mean, he's guaranteed to give you one every time he's on these shows. How they let him in on these shows at this point is either blackmail or the fact that he works for volunteer community service. I have no idea what's the reasoning behind any of this at this point. But in terms of the fight with Urbina, I thought it was a great showing for her. But I just think Fujioka, despite being, I think, 45, when he mentioned during the broadcast sporadically, which was not the best from the zone, by the way. But the one thing that I thought was interesting from her as a whole was that she was still applying pressure late in rounds. And I think what did Urbina in was the fact that you can tell she was visibly spent at the end of this, and those were those rounds she lost, and I think that was pretty much the decision when it's all said and done.
Yeah, Dr. Moret, boy, there's always a card like that, though. To not single out Dr. Moret, we have seen, plenty of cards where, like this one, the other two were 96, 94, and 95 straight up. So this was that outlier that happens from time to time. I'm fine with that 96, 94 card. I wouldn't hate on a 97 card either. Yeah, and I'm with you, Marquise. She being Sulem Urbina, just lost a little steam. Fujioka is relentless. She was a brick wall in front of her. I will also say this. Her conditioning, Fujioka's conditioning was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. And it made a big difference because this was on fairly early in this very long card. And let me tell you something. It was hot as hell out there early in the afternoon. You're on concrete. The ring was shaded. Nothing else was. Oh. And for Southern California, and I will put that qualifier on it. We weren't in Florida. I get it. But for a Southern California afternoon, it was humid. So
I was gonna say, y'all tolerance of heat. Y'all not that in the Southeast, though.
No. I'm fine in Las Vegas when it's 110. But if there's a shred of moisture in the air, it's a problem. And for Urbina, she's from that area. She trains in that area. She isn't used to even a shred of humidity. And I do think it wiped her out. So props to Fujioka. She was a little bit better prepared for the conditions. And man, I give it to her. She is tough as nails. There was just nothing Urbina could land on her that even got her to flinch. And that's demoralizing, especially when you're starting to feel gassed a little bit. You're losing steam as it is. You're thinking, I just can't make any headway. I can't win any rounds, and I'm not really getting any stronger. She never quit. She always learns something. She is still developing her career, and she will still remain a popular favorite and welcome on these Golden Boy cards as an opponent for many fights to come in Southern California.
I go to you, Daniel. We mentioned Marlon Esparza when talking about Seniesa Estrada, right? Esparza was doing ringside commentary for this fight. Afterwards, Fujioka and Esparza was together doing Fujioka's post-fight interview, and she said, Fujioka, that she would love to fight Esparza. Esparza seemed to be semi wanting that bout. Do you think that if fight eventually happened? Because, they brought her over here to fight Sulem. She got the win. Fairly entertaining fight, right? It's a way to get a big fight for Marlon against a now familiar opponent. Seems like a kind of a natural. Your thoughts?
Yeah, as far as first into the fight itself, I felt you kind of felt bad for Sulem in the sense of the fact because she was trying, she was landing technically the harder punches, but Fujioka's constant attack of the body and just overall work rate just beat her to the punch. But it's her first title. It's her first title opportunity. Sometimes you're not going to get it, and sometimes you can learn a few things. And Sulem is going to learn from this now. As far as that tantalizing matchup between Fujioka and Esparza, I think Esparza, we already knew she was already looking at the next person that was going to come in because that hate between her and Seniesa is real. If you left those two alone, they would beat the crap out of each other. And probably eyeing that, but if you can't get Seniesa, that'll be a good thing. Good thing to do, because then you become a title unifier. Say what you want about like how Marlon won that title. She's still a champion right now. And then putting those two fights together and knowing that Marlon is a little bit more seasoned, a little bit more experienced, probably would not let herself get as tired as Sulem did in this instance. Then you have a very, very interesting fight. The question would be now, where would you have it? Because there's going to be a lot of Golden Boy cards either in California or in Texas very soon. And I wouldn't mind having those fights at either one of them. It just mainly depends upon, first, also what the availability and, part of Fujioka's case, how Japan is handling the pandemic, unfortunately, because it ain't looking good.
There's no choice right now because, to your last point, look, it was just announced that there will be no real attendance at the Olympics because of an uptick of COVID-19 cases. Their cars are being canceled right now in Japan because of COVID-19. They have title fights. World title fights is going to happen, but it's going to be very selective in terms of crowd participation and whatnot. So at this point, if that fight were to be made, I would think it would be no choice but to have it here. It makes sense. She could probably make. This may be weird to say, but I think Fujioka could make more money to bring her back here than she would to fight in her native country. And just on paper alone, styles make fights, and both of them like to bring it. Both of them like to come forward. It would be a very entertaining a scrap between these two ladies. So if they can make it happen, absolutely, by all means. I go to you, Marquise, to talk about this last fight. Didn't take place on this card, but it took. We talked about it on our last episode a couple of weeks ago. Chris Colbert, who has a version, quote unquote, of a WBA title at 130 pounds. You know how they go, but they're nonsense, right? Fought King Tug Nyambayar, ironically, at the same arena, place I still will call StubHub. I don't care what the name, Community, whatever, digital, whatever. StubHub always. And a lot of discussion about Colbert, mainly based on his comments about Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. I thought a lot of that was just overblown. How people were attacking Colbert. It was to me, they got on him for how he said what he said instead of paying attention to what he actually said. If you be in balance and pay attention to what he actually said, it wasn't that bad in the hysteria about that, which is nonsensical to me. Anyway, fought King Tug. King Tug had fought Gary Russell a couple of years ago, lost in a world title try at featherweight. This fight took place at 130, and I thought that Colbert, he won in fairly impressive manner, stayed disciplined for most of the fight. He admitted that King Tug could punch, but he stayed mainly behind the jab, kept the fight at distance, kept King Tug at bay. King Tug, in my opinion, didn't do enough coming forward, didn't work hard enough didn't do a good enough job of working his way in, because when he threw the punches, when he let it go, he was effective. But me and Colbert got the win. Moving forward, 130, kind of a division in flux. Where do you see his standing at junior lightweight?
I'm actually intrigued about this with Colbert because I'm trying to figure out what PBC is going to do with him now that he is the I think the version of his WBA regular title is the regular interim championship title, right? I think that's what they're saying on the resume. But yeah, and back on you mentioned them about the Wilder comments. It's so funny how people are attacking folks who attack Wilder when pretty much more often than not, and Charlotte had the same problem with this as well when he mentioned the same thing about Wilder too. And all these guys are saying is they thought Tyson Fury won the fight, which is what 95, if not 98% of the people have been saying for the last two fights they've had together. But it's the way it's mentioned before. It's the way he threw it out there that he got on the backlash. But live and learn on that. But no, in terms of Colbert's performance, actually, honestly, guys, I was kind of disappointed. This was one of those fights where it was made for Colbert to style on this guy and pretty much get a knockout and get an early win. much similar to he did with the fight before against, I want to say it was the fight he had before on Showtime as well. All of a sudden, his name just escaped me. I want to say it's Janabek, but it was that fight. And originally, this guy was supposed to have originally Yorkis Gamboa, so we all know those supposed to knock him out. So
Arboleta, you talking about?
Yeah, the Arboleta fight where he knocked him out pretty much in sensational fashion. This fight was set up the same way. I mean, they had King Tug coming up from 126 on a week and a half notice. Usually, that's a recipe for a knockout, and instead, we got a jab clinic, and that was pretty much every headline you see from this fight, which is the nice way of saying he was fundamentally sound, but he bored everyone and all 15 people at the Pros versus Joe's Dignity Health Sports Complex Arena on that Showtime. StubHub. Arena. But no, Cobra, where he goes from here is interesting because I think they're going to try to set him up with hopefully someone of a same caliber. The WBA and 130 rankings are. I would sit here and try to decipher for you guys, but it's useless. I think Tank Davis still has a version of a belt that he won off a Leo Santa Cruz, right? And at 130, so whatever. But I'm thinking what they're going to do with Colbert at this point is probably give him number one on kind of these guys, kind of like a King Tug, that see if he can get some better rounds in, probably get a better knockout from there, and hopefully. He mentioned that he wants the title. I'm in the camp personally, guys, where he was calling out Leo Santa Cruz, which I want no part of, and I think Leo Santa Cruz is actually moving back down. Praise all of us to that. And the name I keep hearing that keeps calling him out that he wants no part of is Oshaki Foster, and I think that's a matchup that's ideal for the kid. So we'll see what happens. But either way, he got the win, and as you know in the sport, it's win in advance. So
yeah, WBA they need to. Write a letter, reach out to Tank Davis and ask him what he's going to do. His last fight at 130, he looks like there's no way at 140, excuse me, looks like there's no way he can get back down to 130. If he's not going to go back down and fight at 130, give up the belt, relinquish it, and let Cobra fight whoever for that super title. Santa Cruz, to your point, Marquise, he recently announced he wants to move back down to 126 pounds and defend that title he still has. In terms of Colbert, I mean, look, Herring is going to fight Stevenson later on this year. Valdez is going to make a defense in September in Arizona. So where Colbert goes from here is really up in the air. It's a wait and see. I want to wait and see on what PBC decides to do with him next. If, in my opinion, tell Tank to give up that belt because he can't make that 130-pound of it limit no more. And everybody knows it. Quit hogging the belt just to say you have it. Let someone else fight for it who deserves it. Let's move on to some news here, and I'm going to bring everybody into this. And the big topic of last week was this Days of Our Life boxing soap opera that is Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. We all know the deal. Arbitrator basically said that Fury must fight Wilder for a third time in July. They had the press conference. Everything looked to be a go. And then what? Welp, what happens? Fury tested positive for COVID, right? I know Wilder has as many detractors and deservedly so, but I go back to you, Gail. I'm putting the blame, all of this on Fury. With such a big fight down the line, how in blue hell did they let this happen? This is negligence on their part. Complete negligence.
Well, it's the old saying, one of my absolute favorites for so many things in this life: trust but verify. So according to Bob Arum and Warren and everybody else involved, when they were asked, are these guys vaccinated in the wake of the whole Teofimo Lopez COVID debacle, they all said, oh, yeah, sure. Oh, yeah, they're all vaccinated. Oh, yeah, they've all been vaccinated. Well, apparently not. But did they, what did they know and when did they know it? Were they told by the camps? Were they told by Fury and his folks that he was vaccinated and they simply believed him without saying, show us your card or your proof? Okay, that might not have been the smartest thing to do with so much on the line, but let's dig down to where this problem really happened. people do get sick, even who do get vaccinated. And it's rare, but it happens. But Tyson Fury apparently, allegedly, according to what's been reported from some reliable sources, that he got his first dose of the Pfizer vaccine and then didn't follow up with the second one. Now, did he not do it because he was worried about effects on his training? Was it an issue of the schedule in the UK, where, unlike in the United States, where everybody's been very diligent about getting people in for their second shot in a timely manner, in the UK, the attitude was we would rather get the first shot in everyone's arm and then worry about the second wave of vaccinations. So a very different approach. Is that the reason that Fury didn't get that second shot, and because of the protocol there didn't think about it? Who knows? But whatever it was, whatever went down for whatever reason, here's the real problem as I see it. Fury lied about it. He lied about it. He didn't own up to where he really stood, because you'd think if he was vulnerable in any way, there would have been far more protections. You know, all over in many situations besides this one, people are dropping their guard, right? So that's the root of the problem. Now, I will throw it to Marquis for a recent Fury sighting, maybe, apparently, that throws another new wrinkle into this whole thing. And let the conspiracy theories about what's really going on begin.
Yeah, pretty much, Gail, where at this point, we don't know what the real story is, and no one is at this point giving us the story. And you quoted Gail, Bob Airman, and I'm gonna start this campaign because we need to start fact checking the elderly in this country. And we've been letting Bob get away with way too much at age 89. And Dan Le Batard's dad for about 12 years on an ESPN show has proved that his dad can do the same thing. And Bob's doing the same exact
thing. Now, I'm not blaming the age. I'm blaming the gummies.
Oh, it's always the gummies. I mean, they're tasty, they're delicious. But to your point, Gail, with Fury,
in terms of Aram, it's the blunt, it's the spliff, and everything else. Given how he rolled,
you know what? I want to see how he rolls. Actually, there's got to be a video on that somewhere on the internet. but back to your point, Gail, that you mentioned about Fury's recent developments. A photo was popped up on Instagram about him at a car dealership looking for cars during this alleged COVID test, instead of, quarantining himself or what have you. He's out, looking at Ferraris or whatever car he can put his big behind in, which is impressive that this photo leaked today out of all days. Which brings up a really important question. When was this photo taken? Was he really at the car dealership? Was he really at an Auto Nation or a Maruni today, guys, looking at cars? Like, seriously? Like, it begs to wonder a little bit, but the fact that photo was out there and he's doing the whole Fonz thing because he was there makes you wonder a little bit, what is the real story here, and what conspiracy theory are you willing to believe at this point? Does Fury want this fight? Clearly, he doesn't look like he wants it. He's out having a good time looking for cars. It does. Are they trying to do anything they can to just pretty much size up this thing? I mean, they lost the arbitration case, and now they're kind of stuck with this Wilder Fury thing on their plate, and they're trying to find a way to not eat their peas, as they say, as little kids, or what. But either way, this fight's not going anywhere, and this story's not going anywhere too, guys, which makes this a lot more annoying than what it should be, considering that these guys, if they don't want to fight, that's fine, but either be more genuine about it or just let it go. But everything between all of this now is it's a lot of nonsense. It really is.
And what makes this even more annoying, Daniel, much more of a nuisance, is wasn't just Fury, who tested positive. There were members of his camp, of his training, of his team, who tested positive as well. Joseph Parker, he was just there, right? And he ended up testing positive for it. So, and the stuff about what England, US, here's the thing for me. This is under the guidance of Top Rank. They should be taking control of this and what goes on. Where's the culpability in terms of them? Because, they was training at the Top Rank facility. If members of Fury's camp got tested positive, who knows who else tested positive for this, and we just don't know about.
But again, Fury represented that he'd been fully vaccinated, and they took him at his word. So, lesson learned there: trust but verify. You ask for the proof, and I don't know what kind of proof is provided, assuming he got his inoculations in the UK. So that's where it is. It's a big fat mess. And even though it was the fight that none of us really wanted, I was getting all ready to pack up and get in that car and head to Las Vegas. Of course, the conspiracy theories are also swirling around lack of ticket sales. When they were first released, ticket sales were brisk and then apparently had stalled. So there's that.
What do you make of it, Daniel? And to quote Gail's words, this big fat mess.
Okay, first we cleared of it because if he's getting this and not getting this with a top rank, I don't remember Fury being at least recently in the UK as much. He's been more in the US, so maybe he did get charter shots in the US. But here's the thing: I'm going to go over the timeline, and then I may start yelling. Initially, okay, when the reports first came out, we said that the outbreak broke out in Fury's camp. Considering the clown troupe that Fury surrounds himself with, I kind of understood. And then when Rayfield's the one that broke it down and said, "Hey, this is what happened." He took his first shot, and then he never bothered to get the second one. I get me trying to be a positive human being and trying to give people the benefit of the doubt. I said, maybe the idiots that the Fury surrounds himself with thought that they got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. They said there's a vaccine that you only need one shot in. But if he got the shots in the US, I think almost all of us here know that they're pretty diligent about putting in that card what shots you get, which one are you getting. And this is just a whole cavalcade of fuck-ups. Because not only did Fury's team affected into it, first, apparently Joseph Parker got this, even though Joseph Parker wound up going to the McGregor burial over the weekend. But because he went to the Top Ten gym, apparently Ajabe got this and had to be hospitalized for a day.
You talking about heavyweight F.A. Jabba?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Andy Lee.
And nobody still knows anything about Big Baby Anderson's camp, what's affected him. So this is all just so much fuckery involved in this, because Fury, through his own ignorance, has affected an entire card, because all four men we mentioned were scheduled to be in that card. It was supposed to be, at least for the main part, an all heavyweight event. Now Top Rank at least have to scramble to put these four guys in whatever cards they can fit them in. The only fight that they don't have to worry about was the PBC card, the Joaquin Helenius one. The PBC will find somewhere to throw that in. But
you know what would have made more sense to me? If Fury weeks ago had just outed himself as an anti-vaxxer and said, "Oh, hell no, I'm not getting it. It's unproven. It's going to mess up my mojo." He has said a lot of outrageous things that, frankly, we're used to. And if he had said something like that, okay, we got a lot of people like that in this world, and proper precautions could have been taken, or we think twice about who he's exposed to during training. That there's not a lot of folks interacting with him. When everybody was locked down, camps were tight, COVID didn't spread, and everything was fine. But he didn't do that either. He just flat out lied.
He
But
he's technically supposed to be in quarantine.
No.
Before heading back to England, go to quarantine again. If this photo is updated and was earlier today, why is he out here trying to buy a car?
He's in Las Vegas. Las Vegas, are you kidding? The state of Nevada, Clark County, and Las Vegas, There are very few restrictions on anything.
Yeah.
Everything's open. It's the Wild West. Have at it.
Yeah, but here's a bad part situation when it comes to everything involved in this, because yes, it could be Fury putting himself as an anti-vaxxer. It's not surprising considering his views on a lot of things. He could have done himself a very big favor, but say Mojo doing training on it. But guess what? Then don't show up in Miami every other month. This is the part of me that also gets when it comes to Fury.
In Miami and every other month, and some of the time out there clubbing.
Yeah, and this is the part that makes it think, because I remember that part of the press conference where even if he said it in jest, he tried to say like, "Oh, I'll come into the fight at 300 pounds." That already told me something's off. And already showing up in Miami, which, given Fury's vices, is the worst place to go to. From somebody who grew up there, it's the worst. I'm sorry, if you were a former cokehead, you ain't supposed to be in Miami. At least not by yourself with very little supervision. And he was there, and if we're going to talk about the conspiracy theories in this, there's the one about tickets, but if you think about it, they didn't want this. They tried to book it as fast as possible. So promotion and ticket sales, to me, were not really going to play much of a factor to it, because they really just wanted to get it out of the way. Because in Fury's teams and Top Rank's minds, we'll beat the Doss or Wilder, and then we can continue the negotiations with AJ. That's one end. The other end is, if his team is stupid enough to think that, oh, you tested COVID and this, we'll go beyond the arbitrator's timetable, and maybe that'll make sure that it nullifies this so we can go straight to AJ. Wilder's team has already proven to all of us that they are willing to go to court over this. And if you're trying to do that to play that game, you're going to fall spectacularly on your face. Oh, and guess what? Now you're going to probably be liable for punitive damages. And that's because it's very, very rare for a federal court to side against an arbitrator, particularly one that is a former federal judge. So this is just all of the ways messed up, because at the end of the day, now we don't know when this fight's going to be. The hanging thread right now is October, but October's right in the middle of now football season, and you have everything else going on, and now because of all this, you have to put together a brand new undercard. This was, for all of you say, this wasn't a bad undercard, but now you have to put a new one fully back together. And the only hope you have is, okay, if you have 3 more months to train, 3 more months to promote, you may get some people from the UK to come over this fight. To Gail's point, have y'all seen how the Delta variant is putting the boots onto England? Have y'all seen how it's putting the boots into Japan and most of the areas? We haven't hit, at least the parts of the country, us in the country, that have had pretty decent vaccination rates, at least haven't been hit that much. But unfortunately, Nevada's not one of those states. And unfortunately, Nevada is right now with the casinos is the only state right now where you're going to recoup enough revenues that you want to get in this fight. Moving it over here to Barclays, or even trying to do it in the MetLife Stadium, you're still not going to make that money. So this is just a big, big, big mess. And it at this point, it really wouldn't surprise me that if at the end of the day, if the WBC just gets tired of it and strips Tyson Fury. Because he's already proven once that he's willing to be stripped of titles.
Foul and funky situation for sure, with ramifications that will last for a while. There was a lot to digest there from Daniel Marquise. But I'm going to go to you. If there's a way to wrap a bow around this, as Daniel would say, fuckery, try to do so for us before we move on.
Yeah. The best way I can say it, guys, is that I'm more intrigued now because this fight's being pushed back. They're going to have to. They're held pretty much by a civil injunction to make this fight happen. So it's going to happen one way or another because we all know how Bob is with money. So this fight's going to happen one way or another. The problem now is that with this fight happening in October, I mean, we'll still be interested, but what will everybody else be is the question, because I think the date they have slated right now allegedly was last reading was October 9th. And that's because October 2nd had a Alanis Morissette concert at the same venue at the T-Mobile Arena. So they're now fighting for concert acts in Siegfried and Roy and everything else in Vegas that goes on during the fall season. And that's going to be the bigger issue here, guys, is that I don't think this fight has the same cachet with it being pushed back now, because this fight was tailor-made for this July 24th date. It was pretty much like the ultimate. This was the ultimate fight for the summer, and single-handedly Tyson Fury ruined it for everybody, but there's no way around that. That's just the way it is, and the whole situation's been handled poorly. I'm still waiting for an official announcement, guys, by the way, from either side of the fence. The only thing I've gotten so far is from Axis.com. You can't get a ticket, and PBC during the 30 minutes that Manny Pacquiao reminded you that he still hated Floyd Mayweather, they hinted that the fight was canceled. That's all we know about it. So at some point, someone's going to actually start talking here and be an adult in the room and say they jacked it all up and say they're sorry and push this fight back. But until we get that, we're just going to sit here with the conspiracy theories, and we're going to sit here and see where Fury pops up next in these photos or wherever else he's on the internet with, where he's still, on social, taking random photos and saying hi to everybody. So it's a mess, Michael, but hopefully this will all be situated and this fight will be done with so we can keep it moving in this heavyweight division, which was supposed to be this big glamour division. And the only fight we've had so far during this whole pandemic at all is Anthony Joshua, Kubrat Pulev. There we are.
and all parties involved, they better hope that October date can pull off, because
wait a minute. Are you forgetting Andy Ruiz and Chris Arreola? Come on.
Oh yeah.
No,
come on.
No. Very good fight, very entertaining scrap. And I'm not just talking about the action in the ring. I'm talking about the brawls that took place in the audience. But they better hope that this date pulls off in October, because I think you said it, Marquise or Daniel, that's smack dab in the middle of college football season, which rules this time of year. That and particularly on Saturday night, don't let Alabama be involved in the big game. Don't let Ohio State be involved in the big game, because I'm here to tell you now, here in the States, that's it. Don't let Georgia be involved in the big game, or Texas or LSU, because that will take the bulk of the viewership. Not that over that fight. I'm here to tell you now.
Oh, did you forget? Remember, they're going to keep this fight in Vegas. Any team in the Pac-12, if Stanford has a game, if Washington has a game,
Stanford, but don't let it be USC.
Yeah,
don't even let it be UNLV that plays at Allegiant Stadium this year starting up. So it's this is a mess.
So there's a lot in the air here, and it's just a cloudy cluster, situation. Let's hope to, as Marquise said, that the adults can come to the room and have a come to Jesus meeting with themselves and get all of this resolved. During our time off, there was another kind of funky situation I'm going to use specifically, Gail, and this involves WBC bantamweight champion Nonito Donaire and WBO 118-pound champ John Riel Casimero. To give backdrop here, Casimero was set to fight Rigondeaux, right, on August 14th. Then just all of a sudden, that bout was scrapped. Donaire was supposed to fight Casimero on that date of the 14th. Behind the scenes shenanigans in terms of VADA testing on one hand, as well as personal animus between the two camps, kind of ruined that fight. The personal animus involved some misogyny that took place between Team Casimero and Donaire's wife, Rachel, who manages and I believe trains Donaire as well. Donaire came out with a statement initially saying that this fight fell through because of the discrepancy in their issues over VADA testing. But it really, for insiders that know, Donaire was not happy at some of the comments that was directed towards his wife. As a matter of fact, there's an Instagram, an IG Live, I believe that he pinned on his Twitter page, 50 minutes long, in part of that in which he and Donaire and a handler of Casimero, Donaire went off, right? And your reaction to the fight being scrapped, Casimero is going to once again fight Rigondeaux on the 14th of August. Your thoughts on the reason that it is being scrapped? I've heard two camps. Misogyny is real, right? Even in boxing. And you understand fully why Donaire chose to stand up for his wife. That's what you're supposed to do. However, there's another prevailing thought that he could have done that and still fought Casimero at the same time. In short, defend your wife outside of the ring and then defend inside of the ring by beating this dude up for him and others within their camp talking bad about your wife. Your thoughts on all of this and how it all played out, Gail?
It's really important to understand Donaire's history with testing in boxing. Donaire, to his credit, was one of the first and remains one of the few fighters in the modern era who is, tested 365 days a year, fight pending, no fight pending. He's program enrolled at all times with VADA. He's made a significant example of himself about the need for drug testing. And there were a lot of sketchy circumstances over Casimero. And again, sort of a theme for the show tonight, just like the big issue to me with the Tyson Fury situation was the fact that Fury lied about what was going on with him. Casimero and his team appear to be lying about what they were up to. And they said they had enrolled in VADA and they'd done the paperwork, but there was delay after delay after delay. Then the camps tried to say, well, he's in the clean boxing program. Well, come on. It's a well-meaning program, but it is not VADA testing, and it's meaningless for the purpose of this fight. That alone, to me, is more than enough justification for Donaire to say, you know what? Never mind. Never mind.
What say you, excuse me for interrupting, that VADA dropped a tweet saying that eventually both camps agreed to join the VADA testing program?
Yeah, eventually they did. But if you're delaying, you're giving yourself another day to cycle off, allegedly, if that's your intention, whatever you're dosing with. So you buy time, you buy time, you buy time. If that's what's going on, that's a problem. And it certainly looks suspicious. This is paperwork. He has managers. In fact, when you're dealing with guys like Sean Gibbons, speaking of entourage, this is not a big deal. So this is a dog that ate my homework. Oh, I'm going to get that in. Nobody's believing that. Nobody believes that. Now let me address the other issue, and my take on this might surprise you. Rachel Donaire was very critical in her role as manager and trainer of the VADA situation, the paperwork and management situation. So she is the one pushing her counterparts to say, get your shit together or this fight is off, and criticize what was going on and what they believed were falsehoods being told to them or some kind of funny business. So the Casimero camp, not Casimero himself, but a member of his camp, posted some filthy comments and gestures on Instagram, right, and TikTok. All right, I get it. Yeah, we're all big boys and girls, and there isn't anything we haven't seen. Nonito was very upset, very angry, spoke out, and used this in addition to the drug situation, this disrespect between the Casimero team and his team aimed at his wife to call off the fight. And I appreciate a husband defending his wife. However, she is his manager and his trainer. And she should be able to speak up for herself. And to have somebody defend you, your husband, I don't think that's a good look. I believe she's perfectly capable of speaking up for herself, dealing with it herself. I guarantee you in this business, she has plenty enough of a tough hide to either brush it off, blow it off, go after them, whatever it takes. I think it weakens, I see it as weakening her position as his trainer and his manager to not handle it in whatever way she wanted to. And if that was to fire back, fine. If that was to brush it off, ignore it, that's how I would have dealt with it. Fine. I don't think Nonito in the end did her a favor. I don't. I don't love it. But it's done. I appreciate that he is upset about how she was treated. But it's tough for women in the sport of boxing. You know what you're up against. You know what stuff goes on. Listen, if you willingly step in there and take these roles like she has, you need to be able to defend yourself at all times. And I don't think it helps the cause to need somebody to have the hero come to your rescue.
First of all, before I go to you, Marquise and Daniel, want to give a couple of shout outs here. Shout out to Sean in the chat. I want to give a shout out to Lee Groves, who and thanks for the share. And if you're listening live or will listen or check out the show later via YouTube, please make sure as you do so to hit that like button and also hit that subscribe button as well. I want to read a comment here from Lee before I go to you, Marquise. He says, then check on the highlighted here. He says, and also he probably, meaning Donaire, he probably didn't want to reward Casimero with exposure and payday that comes with sharing the ring with Donaire right after Donaire scored a big-time title fight win. He's referring, to, of course, to Donaire's title win over Obali, in which he won the WBC belt last month. I'll go to you, Marquise, and you can chime in as well, Daniel. Your reaction into this fight being quickly being made, and as well as the reasons it being subsequently being put in the can, if you will, the VADA issue, as well as the back and forth between and the personal insults between Team Casimero and Nonito and Rachel Donaire. First, you, Marquise.
Yeah, guys, this whole scenario between these two guys was just weird all around. And I thought once the fight was announced, I was like, oh, this isn't a bad fight. It's a pretty quick turnaround for Donaire. I didn't think you'd be so active on it. But no, and then you can see it, the fight literally piece by piece with every single tweet, every single post that these guys were going back and forth with Donaire and Casimero's people and Sean Gibbons. How many pictures does Sean Gibbons have of Victor Conte with penises? I need to figure that out, guys. Like, that has to stop. Like,
he just comes off as shady. Let's just keep it a buck.
Like, what's that all about? But
that shit was just weird.
It was a lot of that
weird.
It was a lot of romper room, like juvenile stuff going on, guys. And it's like, it's a guys, the stuff that they were posting, I've seen people get kicked off of Twitter and their accounts suspended for it. Nonetheless, these guys are all still functioning on there. And those posts are all still there too, which makes it even stranger. It's a weird place, this social media stuff. But no, I to piggyback off of Lee's point, maybe Lee was right with this. Maybe Donaire feels like he's the bigger man in the A side in all of this and doesn't want to, entertain, these shenanigans by Casimero and all of the back and forth. And let's be honest, guys. I know Rachel Donaire is his trainer and manager, but at the end of the day, it is his wife. Most people, you talk about their wife, it's usually justification to go fro, and he's willing not to instead. So it's pretty impressive on that part because human nature tells you to react accordingly. But the whole thing's a mess, and I'm really wondering now, because now we're getting Casimero instead versus Rigondeaux, which isn't the worst replacement fight, but it's definitely not the Donaire fight for sure.
Daniel, you, Marquise, and myself, we often come at issues like this from a certain level of male privilege and for lack of a better word, man code. Under that code, to Marquise's point, if a dude goes at our wife in that way, our reaction is to, okay, throw everything aside. We throwing hands.
Yeah.
Old school boxing term, Daniel, when old school example of this is when Duran fought Leonard, when Leonard fought Duran the first time, and Duran insulted his wife and his camp, cursed at his wife, I believe may have spat at his wife as well. Leonard was so enraged that he just said, F the strategy. I'm going to meet this dude in the ceiling of the ring and knuckle up. You see that situations with other fighters as well when they had their wives, girlfriends, or whatever insulted. You would think Donaire would do that here, especially that after that exchange between him and a handler of Casimero on Twitter, which he was mad. He was big mad, right? But in the end, he decided not to take the fight. Personally, I would have went ahead and say, okay, F all us. I'm gonna take out my rage on you in the ring. How do you think? I know it's a little bit unfair on your part, but do you think this would be a knock against Donaire, that in spite of him standing up for his wife in the way he did, that he ultimately did not take the fight and exact the form of revenge?
No. Because this situation highlights one of the things about Donaire. He's a man of principle. He does believe in the principles of a lot of things. And yeah, that IG post, you probably have never seen Nonito Donaire that mad before. And yeah, the boxing mentality is, okay, I'm going to meet you up in the ring in that area. And like I said, to Miguel's point, yeah, while Rachel's probably more than willing to handle the situation and probably handle her own way. But like I said, to everybody's point, at a certain point, yeah, if it's your wife, you're going to go off and defend her, whether she wants you to do it or not. And that is the part that plays in here. And honestly, the way Casimero's team were going at it with him, it doesn't make you want to meet Casimero in the ring. It makes you want to go see him. I think all of us know how that connotation when it's, okay, I'm going to see you now. That's the contemplation that probably Donaire has in case of Casimero. And at the end of the day, but the principles kick in saying, if I get into the ring with this guy, I'm validating him. Putting him in the same position even as a champion, but what started all this was the VADA issue. And I don't know, correct me, is it Memo in Casimero's camp? One Mr. Memo Heredia?
I'm not sure. Do you know Marquise Gill?
I think he was at one point. I'm not. Don't hold me to that. It feels that.
Yes, indeed, the Heredias are involved in the Casimero camp, and that's another wrinkle in this whole thing. So where there's smoke, etc. Yeah, that's in the backdrop as well, and something I should have mentioned. Yeah, it's boxing. It's just damn messy all the time.
Yeah. Now, I do agree, though, with Marquise. Somebody needs to hack Sean Gavin Biba's phone and know if there is a folder with just Binter Conti dick pics, because
he had more than one.
No. It's not. No, he had a lot more than one, and it's just like, that's a bit unhealthy, man.
Yeah.
That's a bit unhealthy.
That's
may
a
need to
polite
talk
way
to
of putting
somebody.
it, Daniel.
Yeah, like I'm like, you may need to holler at somebody about that because
Yeah, the kids call that sus nowadays. But
yeah. In many ways, like okay, I get it. Victor Conti does have that face of the guy that's willing to sell you a beat up car at a new car price.
Oh yeah, don't be wrong. Yeah, Daniel. Conti has the face of a Bond henchman from like License to Kill or A View to a Kill. He looks like one of those guys. I get it.
Yeah, no, he has the face. I'll put it to this way: he has the face that gives you the attitude that he's the finance manager of the car dealership.
Yeah.
And as somebody that helped my friend get a car this weekend, yeah, like those are sus vibes. And then it just this entire situation, yeah, it just goes to the fact that okay, I get the point of making it so soon because we have to remember Rigo was Casimero's original opponent before Donaire kind of slid into the DMs. But at the end of the day, if you make a messy situation, it's going to end up in a messy way. And now for Casimero, he lost a pretty decent payday, and he's not going to have to fight somebody like Rigo, who could probably beat him at this point. And in the end, that's probably more what Donaire wants, because we have to remember what Donaire said when he beat Ubale. He wants to avenge his losses. Now, and what is the loss that has impacted his career most? Rigo. So
he also said he wanted a fight with Inoue. In terms of the fight, Casimero, it's kind of turned about fair play for Rigo because it was effed up the way he was originally screwed out of this fight. And now he's going to get it. Kind of a comeuppance, if you will. And in a way, today, he went back into training, right? And he's back in training now. And he says he wants to fight Donaire at the end of the year in Japan. So in the end, Donaire might win because let's just say New Year's Eve this year, he can get that rematch with Inoue in Japan. ESPN will probably pick that fight up and air it. I'm just saying.
The question will be, would there be any fans listed?
Wouldn't matter. Top rank coupled with Inoue's promotion, right? They would pay big money for that fight. They're gonna get paid regardless. I mean, Inoue's already making $1 million. He's gonna even make more for that. Well, let me take that back. Inoue made $1 million for his last fight against the Filipino guy, this Ramirez. I bet he'll make $1 million. I bet he'll make 1.5 to 2 million for a fight against Donaire. You're gonna think Donaire's gonna make good money for that as well. So, crowd participation or not, it doesn't matter. Both of them gonna get paid. Both of them gonna get paid. And to your early point, we put this chat comment up by Lee, excuse me. He says that perhaps Donaire thought this was the best way to punish Casimero's team for winning on. Yeah, you have a valid point. Well, but it just is the eye of your beholder. A lot of people will feel that, and other people will feel that. Look, you insult my wife like that. I'm coming in to whoop you. And you can't really be mad at at the decision. It happened. We move on, and it would have been a good fight. Too bad Casimero and Donaire. Too bad it's not going to happen. Let's move on to some fights here that's coming up this weekend. The main one being undisputed championship at 154 pounds. 54 pounds, Daniel. WBC BAIBF champion Jermell Charlo's fighting Brian Castano, the WBO champion. Mel is the favorite big time, but are folks sleeping on Castano here?
In many ways, yes, because obviously, unfortunately, when it comes to the Charlo brothers, you're going to compare both of them. in this situation, and they're going to compare the situation with this fight with Castaño versus the situation that Maul faced with Montiel. And obviously, like I said, Maul was a very big favorite against it and ultimately won the fight. And so they figure Mel's going to be put in the same situation. But there's subtle differences besides the weight when it comes to, like I said, each Charlo twin, whether it's Maul or Mel. But like right now, Mel, as you can tell, like in the press conference, he's a lot more comfortable. Even like if he did get very combative about pound for pound ratings. But he's very, very, very comfortable with the press a lot more than his brother. And he understands the situation that falls it in, because even though Maul is the one that got the bigger shine right now so far, Mel is going to try to achieve something that has not been achieved in the full belt era. Undisputed at junior middleweight. And
it can be argued that Mel is more accomplished than Maul.
Yes, exactly. And when you look at the level of competition that Mel has faced compared to Maul, outside of J-Rock, Mel has faced in recent years the tougher competition in many ways. At least in the 154 spear, Maul has the Derevchenko fight to lean on, and then he made it a fight a lot tougher than what it needed to against Montiel. And that's what makes this situation dangerous, because Montiel was sort of as a power puncher, but he's not really wasn't that much of a power puncher at middleweight. Castaño is a power puncher at junior middleweight. He's a power puncher in that weight class that has defensive skills and is conditioned himself with really good work rate, like me mentioned in the chat. And that's the type of fighter that has given Mel problems before, i.e. Tony Harrison. And that's what makes this very, very interesting, because obviously people are going to try to look ahead. If Mel gets undisputed, one of the fights you want to look at is that rematch with Erickson Lubin, or move up to 160 and then try to test your luck there, see if you can do a better job than your brother. But this is sometimes the opportunities where the fighters that get a little bit overshadowed, whatever situations, tend to come out on top. And it would not surprise me if Castaño wins this fight. It would not surprise me if he wins it by split decision, because he has the right skill set and he has the right work rate that can bother Mel in this situation.
I'll go to you, Gail, and you can follow up Daniel. Lee in the chat says that Castaño's strength and work rate dovetails into Charlo's weaknesses, which is that he fights in spurts. But the fight is being staged in Texas, so I think Castaño wins this fight. But Charlo get this decision. He also says that Charlo will always be dangerous with his power. To Lee's point, Gail, the key for Charlo is to stay disciplined and to stay consistent against the activity of Castaño, who also has power. Do you think that he can do that for the entire 12 rounds? First, you, Gail, and you can follow up, Marquise.
I think Lee is right on target, as usual, looking at the data that's out there. We know Castaño is a busy fighter, a pressure fighter. He does not have bone-crunching one-punch power, but he's dangerous. This is a legitimate unification fight between two legitimate contending opponents that are well-matched. And as usual, it comes down to which version of the game plan gets imposed. Will it be Castaño's heavy work rate, keep busy version, which would remind me quite a bit of William Zepeda overwhelming Hector Tanara this weekend, although, certainly Charlo has far more skills than to be overwhelmed like that. But that kind of approach, just a swarming work rate, not let Charlo get set sort of game plan? Or will Charlo be able to slow things down, be more deliberate, take those weapons away, and look good? But if it does go to the cards, Castaño has to win definitively. Not close, not by 7 rounds to 5. That's not going to happen. He's got to have an 8-4, 9-3 or more card or score some knockdowns. So it behooves him to be aggressive, really aggressive. Castaño really is in the position of nothing to lose. I like a guy who's in a position like that. Charlo has taken a loss. However, he is very motivated. It's interesting to me between the brothers that Jermal always used to be considered, the better of the two. That tide has certainly turned. And to Jamal's defense, part of it is his lack of dance partners that are worthy of him. Jermel hasn't had that problem. So give him credit right now for taking a lot of these fights, some of which were very tough. One was a loss, which he did avenge. And it's made him a better, more interesting fighter. Guys out there who are reluctant to test themselves, Charlo deserves credit for putting a good example up here. I'm looking forward to it. Of all the Showtime fights that we've had this summer, this is by far the most interesting main event. And I just pray to the boxing gods that it pays off like we think it's going to.
I failed to mention that this fight and this card is going to be will be in San Antonio, will air on Showtime. And Lee also says in the chat, great comparison, Gail Castano to William Zepeda. I'll go to you, Marquise. Your keys to the fight.
My keys to the fight are I'm going to do a complete 180 on all of you guys. I think this fight's not close at all. And honestly, I think we're only getting this undisputed fight, guys, personally, is because Jaime Munguia was scared of facing Dennis Hogan again in a rematch for his WBO belt and moved up weight. That's why we're here. Personally, people forget about the fact that Carlos Adames lost to Patrick Teixeira. Teixeira ran into Castano, and Castano's here against Charlo. I just think, in terms of to piggyback Gail's point, I think his aggression is what I think is going to be his downfall, actually. And I think that's why I've been saying all week long, I think this fight ends somewhere in the middle rounds, like 6 or 7. It's something about Charlo's power that when he lands, it hurts. And the last fight he had against Harrison proved that. Not the last fight against Harrison. The last fight he had against Rosario proved that. The fight he had against Harrison proved that. It was one of those fights, guys, where especially the one with Rosario, where we saw where Charlo was just a force and pretty much was able to imply as well, and was also to keep Rosario at bay, which is, I think, going to be the key for him in this fight, to answer your question as well, Michael. But and if he does that, I don't think this fight lasts as long as it does. I know Castano is one of those guys that throws a lot of punches, but I just don't think this is one of those guys where he can just overwhelm Charlo in terms of volume. He's going to have to be a little smarter and actually have to box him out. So I'm hoping that this fight's a lot more competitive than what it is. It's great in terms of recognition and legacy for Charlo if he wins. Or Castaño actually being an Argentinian and winning an undisputed title again. That's a big thing down there too. So don't have a parade for him if he wins. I'm just hoping that I think this fight's going to be a lot more interesting on the front end of it. But I just think once it's all said and done, Charlo just runs one into him, and that's the end of this.
In a dream world for all boxing fans, whether you are casual or hardcore heads like ourselves, the ultimate scenario is to have one champion per division. If everything plays out Saturday in San Antonio on Showtime, we will get that. And whatever you think about the fight or the fighters themselves, that's all you want at the end of the day. And that's and that can only be described as a good thing. So kudos to both men for putting it all on the line. Kudos to all parties that decided to make this fight, and the sport itself ultimately benefits. Going to shut things down on that note. Gail privately had to tell her she had to dip out if you early. If you want to talk boxing, media, or check her out occasionally on TMZ. You can follow her boxing stuff on Community Digital News. That's on CommDigiNews, COMMDIGI News.com. You can also check her out on Twitter at PRPro San Diego. I want to thank Lee for his comments and his questions. Appreciate all your questions and your comments, Lee, and also thank you for the this particular live show. Also want to thank Sean for checking us out. Going to go around to the rest of the panel here. Go to you, Marquise Johns of Big Fight Weekend. For those who want to talk boxing or anything else, let the folks know where they can find you.
Absolutely, Michael. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. I'm always under Cracking Wise and doing everything else boxing related at Twitter at Weak Sauce Radio, all one word. Still, pound for pound, guys, one of the best Twitter handles in the business. I'm challenging everybody and anyone on that. I'm taking all upcomers, anybody, even for a WBA title. I don't care. But no, you can find me at Twitter on at Weak Sauce Radio. You can find me, as you mentioned before, BigFightWeekend.com for all my writings of any boxing news, past, present, current, future, anything of note that's happening during our news cycle or anything interesting that pops by. Me and co-host, co-writer TJ Reed's been working on this thing for a couple of years now. He recently put up the thing about Fury and his shenanigans. He's been all over that, like the ham and cheese loaf sandwiches from Oscar Mayer. So pretty much any boxing coverage, you can find us there. But for the most part, just BigFightWeekend.com and Weak Sauce Radio on Twitter. That's your best bet to find yours truly.
Again, I want to thank you for joining us. As I said at the beginning of the show, I heard you on Daniel's podcast. We've been in conversations amongst other boxing media members privately for a few months now on the side. Let's go for broke here, see if I can get the brother on the show. And I want to thank you for accepting my invite. And we will have you back on the show again as often as you want. An open door policy here. Whenever you want to join us again, you're more than free to join the show.
Absolutely, Michael. You know, I'm gonna take you up on that because anytime you guys want to talk box, to quote the great movie quote, it's not that busy, man. So I'm around. So I'll be in touch.
Absolutely. And last but certainly not least, Daniel from the Inscriber and For Boxing News podcast. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk wrestling, pro wrestling. I think it was an AEW show tonight. Let the folks know where they can hit you up. Or for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat.
Yeah, right now, if you're watching the NBA right now, Phoenix Suns 93, Bucks 88. They might go 3-1. You never know. You might hedge your bets on that. But definitely, like I said, join me on Twitter, Rux99, RAWKUZ99. And like I said, we got the show. We're not going to have it this week because we did it on Sunday. Like I said, the big show with Marquise and Carlos Toro. But we're probably coming on next week and we'll be able to cover everything's going on into it. And who knows, by then we may actually know that Tyson Fury, in fact, is patient zero of COVID. Who knows?
If you want to talk boxing with me, boxing, music, fitness, you know what it is, Brother JR, at Brother JR76 on Twitter. As I said at the beginning, if you want to check out all things regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the website is the place to go to. P4PBoxingReport.com. Again, on this site, you can check out links to where to find us all over the podcast realm, Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're anywhere and everywhere just about right now. You can also check out where to find us all over social media, Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, Facebook. We got pages all over the place where you can donate. Let donation be the best nation. I don't care if it's $1, $2, $5, $10, whatever you can spare. If you have some spare change in your wallets, please, if you could donate some coin to Pound for Pound Boxing Report, it'll help the overall production behind the scenes. And last but certainly not least, if you want to get your body right for the summer, if you want to take part in my Let's Build Together group challenges, you can check out my online coaching page on Pound for Pound Boxing Report. The July challenge started on the 5th. Is going to end mid-August area. Daniel and Gail's taking part again. Daniel, Gail, I need some updates from you. Or you want to take, if you want 2 weeks of free workouts, please check out my coaching page. Give you that option over on Beachbody on Demand. 2 weeks, all the programs on Beachbody on Demand free. I would take advantage of that if I were you. On the next episode, we will do a recap of Charlo and Castano. We didn't mention it on this particular show, but we will also do a recap of Rolly Romero, who has been a bit of a lightning rod over the past year or so. He's going to fight Yigit, I believe his name is. Uh, Correct me if I'm wrong on that. Yigit, I believe he's going to fight on the undercard. So we will talk about those fights, and we will do a preview of Joe Joyce, who I think is going to be in for a tougher than expected fight against Carlos Takam. That's going to be in London on the 24th. Again, I want to thank Lee. I want to thank Sean for joining us on the show. For Gail from Communities Digital News, for Marquise, a Big Fight Weekend, Daniel of the Inscriber, and for Boxing News. I'm your host, Michael. This has been episode 332 of the Pound for Pound Box Report. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.